A couple of months back, I had an issue where once a week I had a dodgy tummy in the morning. Now, I had always planned to have a swim session which went straight into a gym session, but by the time I got to the pool, my tummy felt bad. I won't go into too much detail, but it wasn't pleasant, and it took me a couple of weeks to realise that it was actually my breakfast which was causing me a problem. This was always on my day off, and I had a different breakfast to what I usually would have, and it was more in line with what I would have before I raced. So I made some changes and sorted things out, and I wasn't bothered by it anymore. The bottom line? Don't sell yourself short and give yourself even more reason to stand in the Portaloo queue before you race. In today's video, we're going to talk about how and why you should practice your breakfast and just how much you should actually eat before you race. So what is up, nutrition nerds, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, then hey, my name is James and I'm a sport and exercise nutritionist with a focus primarily on triathlon. On this channel, we talk about everything related to nutrition and triathlon, so if that sounds good to you, then consider pressing the subscribe button and that notification icon to stay up to date with all of the videos that I do. So on to today's topic, which is all about how and why you should practice your race day breakfast. I did a video specifically on whether breakfast is important before a triathlon, and I've linked it at the top of the screen if you're interested because we pick up from things a little bit there. So first things first, why don't we look at what the guidance says that we should eat before we race and see just how practical or realistic that is. The guidance says that we should be eating somewhere between 1 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight before we race, and that number just depends on how long we're eating before we race. Now, if you work it out and go to that 4 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight, that's actually quite a lot of food, and I'm not sure how many people can actually tolerate that. And as a slight tangent, that is the thing about guidance, and especially around nutrition, it's why we've got to practice, because it's fine for us to say we should do this or we should do that, but actually, we know that everyone is different, so we've got to factor that in, but it does give us some good guidance. And what we should take away from it is that the further we are out from our race, the more we should eat. And the closer we are to our race, the less we should eat to reduce the risk of stomach upset. So what type of food should we be going for in this pre-race breakfast? Well, that 1 to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight is a focus on carbs, and that's what it should be on. We want mostly carbohydrates and a little bit of protein and fat. They aren't really the focus, and they aren't particularly helpful when it comes to racing. And they also take longer to digest, which means you're more likely to get tummy upset when you have them in larger amounts. But they can make you feel fuller, and some people will prefer that, so you can experiment and see what works well for you. As far as carbohydrates go, we want things which are easier and simpler to digest. So we want things like white breads, jams and honeys, rice pudding, or perhaps something like sugary granola. We definitely do want to be aiming for a lower fibre meal here before you race. So this is one of those times that we don't want to go particularly heavy on fruits or vegetables or whole grain sources of carbohydrates. And the other thing to say here is that the further out we are from our race, the more preferable it is to have solid options of food because you've got the time to digest them properly. But as you get closer to the race, you should consider things like liquid forms of carbohydrates because that is easier to digest and will reduce the likelihood of tummy upset. So at that point, you might be thinking of just having some energy gels, sipping on a carbohydrate-based drink, Lucozade, Gatorade, something like that. Now the next thing to do would be to experiment, and don't leave this just to race day. You want to have some specific race day prep days where you get up at the sort of time that you're going to be racing and you have your intended breakfast. And then you go for a swim or you do a brick session or something like that where you're actually testing your nutrition to see how you feel and how you get on with it. Do you get any tummy upset, cramps, diarrhea, anything like that, or were you totally fine with it? And actually, if you only started with a little bit, could you have a little bit more and would you feel more satisfied if that was the case? If so, then you could try having that little bit more and see how you feel. The end result is that you can tailor it and refine it to just what works for you and something that you know that you are comfortable with and you can have it without any problems. And that just reduces the issue of any upset from your nutrition on race day which means you're much more likely to have a good race. Now, it's important to talk about hydration as well, and I've done a full video for you on this, and I've linked it at the top of the screen if you're interested. And that is it for today's video. I hope you found it useful and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear if you've got any comments or questions. Is your race day breakfast something you've even thought about? Or are you one of those people who has practiced it and knows exactly what you want to do? Either way, let me know, and if you've got any races coming up. As always, if you haven't already, then I would really appreciate it if you found this video useful to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't, press subscribe along with that notification icon to stay up to date with all of the videos that I release. And I will catch you next time. See ya!